when you're going to the Father. So in Hebrews the 12th chapter, I'm starting at the first verse, and I'm going to read to the 6th verse. And it says, "Wherefore, seeing we also are compassed about with so great a cloud of witnesses, let us lay aside every weight and the sin which doeth so easily beset us, and let us run with patience the race that is set before us, looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and is set down at the right hand of the throne of God. Ye have not at the throne of God." Verse 3, "For consider him that endured such contradiction of sinners against himself, lest ye be wearied and faint in your minds. Ye have not yet resisted unto blood, striving against sin. And ye have forgotten the exhortation which speaketh unto you as unto children. My son, despise not thou the chastening of the Lord, nor faint when thou art rebuked of him. For whom the Lord loveth, he chastens, and scourges every son whom he receiveth." And even when he's saying son, he's talking about us as his daughters too. So when I was reading this, I wanted to read some of my commentary, because in order to get to a place of the altar, these are the things that we need to talk about. And so in the first verse, it says, "The presentation, exhortation to run, finds its basis in an example of the champions mentioned in chapter 11. Remember in chapter 11, and I'll take you there a little bit, of the faithful patriarchs that it talked about. And the patriarchs that it talked about was, one was Abel, Abraham, Enoch, and I'm not in order, I'm just kind of thinking Noah. And so it talked about the patriarchs in the 11th chapter of Hebrews. And these are the heroes of faith, and they are like a cloud of witnesses. As witnesses, they are sometimes regarded as spectators or as martyrs, yet this Greek word should be understood as referring simply to those who testify or witnesses. And the emphasis is on the witnesses provided by their living by faith. I think I'm going to say that again. Living by faith. First to me, then to you. This race of faith is described by 3 modifying statements. The first one is to run by laying aside every weight. What is weight? This refers to impediments that weigh one down, whether clothing or excessive body weight. These things are not inherently wrong, but for the diligent runner or the faithful Christian, they must be removed. Second is to be run by putting off the entangling sin, to refer to the one sin above all others that defeats a Christian. All of ours are different, and this may be a different sin for each individual. Everybody know that sin. Everybody knows it. It is the sin that every Christian has to defeat. This may be different, like I said, but the third is to be run with patience. Since patience is not an attribute commonly associated with running, this word would be better translated as endurance, as it is the congruent verb in this form in verse 2 and 3. Endurance and persistence have been on the author's mind since the end of chapter 10. What did he say in chapter 10 of Hebrews? In chapter 10 of Hebrews, at the end of it, it said, and I'm just going to read the 2 verses at the end, the 38th and the 39th verse of Hebrews 10. "Now the just shall live by faith, But if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. I don't know about y'all, but that hit right on top of my head, and I hope it did yours too. I want to read it again. It's Hebrews 10:38-39. And it says, now the just shall live by faith, but if any man draw back, my soul shall have no pleasure in him. But we are not of them who draw back unto perdition, but of them that believe to the saving of the soul. So when we're talking about the endurance, persistence, have been on the author's mind, that was in the verse 36 and 38th verse of chapter 10. And we can even do the 11th verse of chapter 11. Chapter 11 says, through faith also Sarah herself received strength to conceive seed, and was delivered of a child when she was past age, because she judged him faithful who had promised. And that is Hebrews 11:11. Come on, y'all. I hope I'm encouraging somebody in this. And I heard somebody say, and I don't know who it was, so I don't want to quote, it's not a direct quote, but it says, get your weight up. They were talking about get your weight up in your faith. Bring your weight up. And so it says, and take off everything, the weight that so easily beset you, but then put on Christ. Put on Christ. This is me saying this, but put on Christ. And that's what I hear him saying to me, but put on Christ. In the 7th through the 13th verse of chapter 12 of Hebrews, he talks about something else. But before I get into that, I just want to remind us that just as in verse 1 established some qualities for the entrance into and the actual running of life's race, verse 2 directs one's eyes to the finish line. Jesus is the author and finisher in that. So let's read 12:2 again. Looking unto Jesus, the author and finisher of our faith, who for the joy that was set before him endured the cross, despising the shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Jesus is our author and our finisher, in that he has already blazed the trail and finished the course for us. And what we do as when we take on the life of Christ and we in the image, that's why it says in, I believe it's Philippians 2:5, I believe let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus. So we're taking in on his mindset, the way he thought. What did he think? How was he finishing his race? How did he finish his race? And in 3 and 4 of Hebrews 12, it also goes back to chapter 11, providing many champions for believers to emulate. But the supreme example of endurance is Jesus himself. Of endurance, Jesus. Jesus endured, finished it, settled it, completed it. Done. He did it all. And so we are to emulate him, to look like him, to smell like him, to talk like him, to walk like him, to think like him, to speak like him. So in verse 6, whom the Lord loveth, he chastens. God's principle of disciplining his own people is completely congruent with human practices. It doesn't go with us. We can't handle it. We don't understand it, but it's the same. And this quotation from Proverbs 3 and 12 stating God's practice, corresponds to the commands God gave to the fathers. How about we go to Proverbs 3 and 12? And Proverbs 3 and 12, and I'm going there right now, Proverbs 3 and 12. And with Proverbs 3 and 12, it says, "For whom the Lord loveth, he corrects, and even as a father the son in whom he delighteth." So God corrects. God's correction shows his love. As I was saying in Hebrews 12, 5 and 6. His correction shows his love. So when you're going through and you're like, oh, his own people, and he corrects us. Proverbs 3:12 just talked about it. "And he that spared his rod hated his son, but he that loveth him chasten him," or corrects him, "betimes prompting." And you can also see that in Proverbs 13:24, 22 and 15, and 23 and 13. Love and corporal punishment are not incongruent. They are complementary and necessary aspects of training. Do y'all hear that? Are y'all hearing that with me? I hope y'all are. And I want to go through this enduring chastening 7 through 13. "If ye endure chastening," and remember chastening correction, "God dealeth with you as with sons. For what son is he whom the Father chastens not? But if ye be without chastisement, whereof all are partakers, then are ye bastards and not sons." And that's not a cuss word. That is actually what he said. And this is King James. "Furthermore, we have had fathers of our flesh which corrected us, and we gave them reverence. Shall we not much rather be in subjection unto the Father of spirits and live? For they verily for a few days chastened us after their own pleasure, but he for our profit, that we might be partakers of his holiness." Woo. Of his holiness. Verse 11. "Now, no chastening for the present seems to be joyous, but grievous. Nevertheless, afterwards it yieldeth the peaceable fruit of righteousness unto them which are exercised thereby." And in that one, in the 11th one, verse, it talked about that it is exercised thereby, that once we get to that point where we are, if we endure it, then it will yield what? Peaceable fruit of righteousness, right standing unto them which are exercised thereby. And 12th verse, "Wherefore lift up the hands which hang down, and the feeble knees, and make straight paths for your feet, lest that which is lame be turned out of the way, but let it rather be healed." I mentioned something the other day, and I just want to give my testimony on something that I'm healing. And I love how he brings me to this, and now I see what he's saying to me. And I don't know if he's saying it not only to me, but to whoever's listening. In the 12th and 13th verse, some of the runners of verse 1 have grown so weary that they have become stooped and need spiritual strength to be straightened up again. And they must be given help, yet they themselves also must straighten their paths by avoiding obstacles that would spiritually trip them up. And spiritual strength, y'all. Isaiah 35